Hello everyone, we're doing another series preview, which is part of our 2022 playoff preview series, which is going to be the second round in this case, and that's going to be the preview of the Hurricanes and the Rangers. Please make sure though, before we start, to subscribe to the channel if you are new and you want to see more content from me. Now let's get started. And I have to say, I think this series could be pretty good, but why? Well, you have these two teams playing each other, that being the Rangers and the Hurricanes, that had pretty interesting seasons. The Hurricanes dominated most of this year, on their way to the third best record in the league, as well as a division crown for the second consecutive season. Then they beat the Boston Bruins in 7 games, all 4 wins coming at home, and that was just really a fun series. As for the Rangers, they fought the Canes, and they weren't able to win the Metro this year, of course, but they fought Carolina for a really long time, and they went on to finish with the 8th best record in the league and came back from a 3-1 series deficit against the Pens in round 1. So, what are some of the storylines, factors, things like that going into this series? Well, there's a lot of them, but for me, I think a big thing here will be the depth of the Hurricanes versus the talent of the Rangers. Don't make the mistake of me saying, oh, the depth of Carolina, and think, okay, he doesn't think that they have the star power. There's plenty of good guys on Carolina. Aho, Svechnikov are big-name players. But I think the thing here is that their depth overall is just very, very impressive. Whereas the Rangers definitely propelled more by their star power. You look at the Rangers' top 4 scorers, that being Kreider, Zibanejad, Panarin, and Strome. They combined for nearly 50% of the goals for New York this season. And yes, this team did get some scoring from some other players in the first round, but they just don't have a lot of guys you'd expect to shoulder the load if they can't score goals. And that's a little bit of a problem, whereas the Hurricanes are a little bit different. They have their top 4 goal scorers of Aho, Svechnikov, Niederreiter, and Teravainen, who counted around 41% of their goals this year, but they also have a lot of other guys that can score for them. Vincent Trocheck, you have Seth Jarvis, Jesper Fast, to name a few, plus some other guys as well. And I think a big thing for them is, while they don't necessarily have just some guys that can score, they have other guys that play a big factor in their offense and their ability to get those chances, with other guys that come to mind like Jacob Slavin, Tony DeAngelo, or guys that come to mind where maybe they don't score a crazy amount of goals, but they are able to kind of be a factor in that offensive game. Now, does Rod Brindamore's group still need their top guys to score goals pretty consistently in the series? Probably, yeah, I would say that. But from what we've seen so far, it's apparent the Hurricanes are in much better shape if their star players, or top 4 guys, I guess you could say, as their goal scorers, aren't scoring goals than the Rangers, because they have more depth, which is a big thing. And I think that New York is probably going to need their stars to shine in this series. Moving on to another topic that I have is whether or not the Rangers learned from this season. What I mean by that is whether or not that they learned from the games they played against their Metro Division rival. They played them 4 times, only won a single game out of those 4 games, went 1-3-0, and I think that the only one they had, they were outshot 44-18 in that game. And if that trend continues, like we kind of saw in the first round against Pittsburgh, then I don't think the Rangers should count on another comeback in this series. They have to play better, and I think they know that, we know that, they all know it, and they have to learn from those 4 games, as well as other footage. They're going to be looking at the regular season, how the Canes did against the Bruins, to see how they have a better chance of beating Carolina, because make no mistake, they have plans on going deep. The Rangers are a franchise that haven't won a Stanley Cup since 1994. Their fans want it pretty darn bad. Now, to highlight how much they have to learn, though, we have to talk about the first time these two teams played each other this year. The Rangers were outshot 11-4 in one period. Not great at all, not something that's terrible like that Dallas Calgary playoff game the other night, but the big takeaway here was the fact that they were outchanced 16-0 in that period, on their way to being outscored 2-0 in that time alone. Luckily for the Rangers, the second 2 games of that regular season series seem to be a little bit more even than the first 2, but we're just going to have to see which New York team we're going to be getting for this matchup. As for the final topic, you know what it is. We always have to talk about the goaltending, and that is my favorite part of the previews. My favorite positions going, my favorite players growing up are or were goalies. But yeah, so I think that's going to be a big factor in this series. Freddie Anderson's status still remains to be a little bit unclear for this round. Antti Raanta showed he could be that guy in between the pipes against the Bruins in round 1. if his team can dominate the possession game, which they likely will against New York, then expect him to play well for really big stretches of this series. As for Igor Shesterkin, I think a lot of people say, oh, maybe he didn't have the greatest series last round. And yeah, the numbers didn't look that good, I gotta be honest with you. But my response to that is that Pittsburgh was abusing his teammates in front of him, and he was left out to dry more times than not. And yeah, that really doesn't matter come playoff time, as you just have to keep the puck from going in the net. It's really all that matters is winning. Ottinger, of course, was a guy that had a really big series. And yeah, at the end of the day, yeah, he had a great playoff performance, but they didn't win. So you need to win, and I think he needs to get to where he could put on a show like Jake did against the Flames in order for his team to really be able to, win this series. So, having said all these things, I have to make a pick, and I will be picking the Carolina Hurricanes in 7 games. Personally, I would say Carolina in 6, but playoff hockey is kind of weird. Maybe the Rangers get some scoring from their non-top 4 guys, and maybe they're able to have all 4 of their star players click at once. Maybe Igor has plenty of games. Maybe it's all at once. But I do think that the Canes should be able to win this series. Could New York win? Absolutely. We've seen way bigger underdogs in New York go on way longer runs and even hoist the cup a time or two as well. And so there is a chance, but I do think that Carolina at the end of the day is in a better position to advance. They've got plenty of good players. They've got a lot of decent players that have got top 6 roles in other teams playing for them and playing well. So I'm curious to see how that goes. Side note, this is not a direct correlation to how this series could go, but we know that in the regular season the Hurricanes were the most penalized team in terms of average time on the PK per game. So for the Rangers, that could be a good thing if penalties get called at a high rate. It just depends for a playoff series. But I do think you hear the argument that it's less likely to be called. But if that's the case, they would have to go against the team with the best PK percentage in the regular season and try to score off that, so we'll have to see. But now it's time to hear who you'd pick. So make sure to comment below who you think will win and in how many games. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to my channel if you are new and you want to see more content from me. Also, don't forget to check out my other series previews. I'll leave those at the end of this video for you to check out if you want to. Everybody stay safe, have a great night, and you go off hockey, alright? Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.